You can make bagels from scratch in 2 hours. Welcome to my channel, Kindling Wild. I'm a homeschool mom of 5 boys, and I'm just sharing life. This week we took a morning off of homeschool because we were watching my friend's children while she prepped for our local high school youth conference. And I was really happy to have an excuse to just be in the kitchen doing homemaker stuff. So the first thing that I do when I make my Einkorn bagels is I just dissolve some traditional yeast in warm water, and I go ahead and add 3 tablespoons of maple syrup to that. I do the yeast and stuff by weight because it's easy for me, but you don't have to do it that way. I have both measurements on my blog post. So here you can see I'm just adding some ginger in the recipe. This is a tip I got on a Modern Farmhouse post, and it is amazing for einkorn flour. Another thing that works really well for einkorn flour is that you mix it for a long time in the mixer, and it really helps the texture of the finished product. I love using einkorn because it's something that I can actually digest, but knowing these tips and tricks because of the low gluten content is really helpful in the finished product. So as you can see, I'm just mixing it all up with my dough hook here, and I'm just slowly pouring the rest of the warm water in. When you're making something that you want to rise, make sure that you never use hot water. Only warm water, like maybe maximum 115 degrees. I cannot believe that I put the salt in with the water. I never usually do it that way, but anyway. So this is what it looks like after about 10 minutes on low. You can see that it's all around the dough hook and it's kind of shiny. This dough is really sticky, so oil your hands before you try to get it off that dough hook. And then I always just cover it with a lid. Now it's time for a cup of tea because we deserve it. I'm making these bagels for lunch, and I'm also making a pot of soup to go with it. My kids have some friends over, and I just thought it would be a good, easy, large group lunch. When you have 5 kids, if you add another family, it doesn't really matter if it's a large family or a small family. It just feels like you're cooking sort of for like a small army. Whenever I'm making soup, I just saute up some onion and garlic and celery, and I always find that soup is just delicious if you just start with those basic ingredients, and if you have good bone broth to go with it. So in the Instant Pot behind, I had bones in there simmering for a long time, so soup is necessary on the menu if you have bones. Here I am just chopping up some carrots, and I cut extra off the top for our bunnies. When we moved into town, we had to get rid of our 100 chickens from our homestead, but we have rabbits. I'm sure you guys also have those kinds of fun go-to recipes where you can just whip it up, and bagels and soup is definitely one of those things for me. I find I can look at the clock at like 10 a.m. and be like, oh, I don't know what's for lunch. Bagels and soup it is, and have it ready for noon because these bagels are not sourdough, so they turn out so quickly. It takes under 2 hours to make that recipe, and while the bagels are rising, that's the time that I usually chop up the things for the soup too. So here I'm just pouring off the chicken and beef stock that I have going on in this Instant Pot, and getting ready to shape my bagels. I absolutely love this bench scraper that I have for doing sourdough. It's so good for like just dividing up your dough and everything like that. And you'll see that I didn't flour my surface because, again, with the einkorn, it works so much better to oil the surface. So all I did was just poured a little bit of avocado oil on my counter and wiped that all over it and wiped it all over my hands as well. And then you don't have a big sticky einkorn dough mess. This recipe that I have makes a dozen of these yummy bagels, and they're a pretty good size. So I just quickly form them up. I kind of like stretch them backwards as I'm forming them. And then you just put a little hole in the middle, and they don't need to really do a second rise or anything before going into the pot. They expand when they're in the pot boiling. After you boil your bagels, you do have to bake them for about 20 minutes at around like a 425 degree oven. I usually do 400, but that's just because of how my oven is. So if you do want to make them on a bit of a time schedule, you want to make sure that you have your pot ready to boil and your oven preheating, and then you can get them done really in quite a short amount of time. And it is so satisfying to have homemade bread for your family with none of the junky ingredients or preservatives at a fraction of the cost, especially if you're using organic ingredients. I buy my organic flour in bulk from a local mill, and I know that it is fresh. I know that it is good quality, and I just absolutely love that. I have not gotten into grinding my own grains on a regular basis yet, and I'm not sure that I will at this current exact phase of my life and my kitchen. Maybe after an amazing kitchen renovation where I have all kinds of storage, but I love my kitchen in my house. I love my house. I love my kitchen. I'm so thankful that I have it. But the family who lived here before us, it was an older lady and gentleman, and you can tell that when they designed this kitchen, they were really thinking about, just cooking for the two of them most of the time, which is fine, absolutely fine. I find it to be a little bit overwhelming sometimes, since I regularly am cooking, obviously, for 7 every single day, all our meals from scratch, and then sometimes I'm cooking for like 35 or even more than that. Here I am remembering finally to preheat my oven because I obviously was not as smart as all of you guys are going to be. On this beautiful day, I was actually kind of overwhelmed in my brain. We just had a lot of extra things going on, which is actually kind of the norm, but I like it. So I just leave the bagels covered with a clean tea towel while I bring the pot to a boil. And when you're boiling your bagels, I like to put in a tablespoonful of brown sugar and a tablespoonful of baking soda into the water. I find that it works really well, and I like to boil the bagels for about 2 minutes on each side. You'll see that they float in the water while you're boiling them, and it's really satisfying to watch. Here I finally remember to put the lid back on my Dutch oven while I wait for the water to come back to a boil. I mentioned that my brain was kind of in a busy mode, and when that happens to me, I find that just putting things away is the most important thing that I can do. And also making sure to not get overwhelmed and sit down and scroll social media, because that just makes everything worse. It's not helpful at all. It's not productive at all. So I just went into putting things away mode while I finished waiting for the pot to come to a boil. Thankfully, the kids were mostly happy playing outside on this day. I think that they thought that I would make them do schoolwork if they came inside, which is, yeah, it's pretty accurate homeschool mom style. Lately, I've been thinking a lot about that winter burnout feeling. You know the one. I call it the Februaries, actually. I don't remember where I got that term, but that's what I like to call it. I have some tips for you for what I do for the Februaries, because I do feel like I have gotten a bit of a handle on those winter moods over the past few years. It's interesting because I noticed once I moved to Ontario that winter wasn't as glum as when I lived in Nova Scotia, and I felt like the big difference was how much sunshine there is, because on a really cold winter day in Ontario, a lot of the time you'll have bright sunshine, even though it's cold, and it's shining off of the snow, and it honestly is so lovely, especially when we used to live in Muskoka. It was just such a big difference from where I grew up in the city. So here I'm just boiling the bagels. I like to use a nice large pot because you can actually do half a dozen bagels at once. It's just 1 to 2 minutes per side. I like to go a little closer to the 2-minute mark, and then you flip it over. You can see that the bagels have expanded a lot once they were put in the water, and that's kind of what they look like whenever you flip them over. Woo! It might be a little bit crowded in this pot, but it works. There we go. So as soon as you scoop those bagels out, you want to put them directly on a baking sheet. I have them here on a baking stone. I really love these baking stones. So I don't need parchment paper, but they would stick, and you would need parchment paper if you were putting them on like a normal cookie sheet. And then you want to sprinkle your bagel toppings on right away. So I have this really yummy everything bagel mix, and it's just a Clubhouse one that I got at the grocery store. And it is so tasty. It's got some salt flakes and some garlic flakes in it, and it's just like got a bunch of seeds, and it's really, really, really yummy. It smells literally so delicious. And there's actually no fillers or junk in this everything bagel mix either, so I can recommend it based on the ingredients that I saw on the label. I just sprinkle it liberally. There is a bit of waste doing it this way, so you could potentially also do it over a plate and then transfer your bagel onto your baking tray afterwards. Or you could do it like if you were doing a sugar donut and you like dip it in the plate. That could work as well. So I do have my oven preheated to 400 or 425-ish, and I'm popping them in there for 20 minutes. So now my little guy is getting really hungry for his lunch. He's nearly 7 months, so he had a great nap and was super cooperative while I made the bagels. It's funny because a lot of days I considered to either be a preparation day or a recovery day. And this particular day in our week was both a prep day and a recovery day. It's always on recovery days that your baby sleeps well because they've been out and about socializing, and then you're having that day at home to kind of recover, and they have a nice big long nap because they're tired from all of that stimulation on the previous day. So yeah, a lot of our days do have to both be prep and recovery, which is fine. It's just you get into a rhythm. But I like to try to make extra food on prep days and have things sort of set. Here is the soup I made. It's just like a chicken and beef broth. I'm not picky, honestly, about soup. I just find if you add lots of good broth and plenty of high quality salt, then you've got a delicious soup, and it's really high in minerals and electrolytes, and it's just an amazing health food. Making sure that you're focusing on nutrition is for sure the second tip that I have for that winter blahs. There's nothing worse than if you already feel a bit blah and then you're also not nourishing your body well. So making sure you're taking whatever supplements really work for you and that kind of thing is important. One thing that we've been enjoying lately in our home is our Yoda player. This was a Christmas gift for my younger kids for their room for them to play audiobooks, but our whole family has been really enjoying it. We have been enjoying the Yoda daily broadcast because it's a little daily broadcast for kids, and they just sort of play simple games. Sometimes it's a little math game or a silly game, and they say whose birthday it is in the world and just different little things like that. But it's very fun. We like that it's different every time, and it kind of has something for everybody. I just discovered that you can put the RSS feed for your favorite podcasts on, and me and Leo think it's very cool because it automatically updates. Okay, here are our beautiful bagels. They are ready to come out. They look so good. I've been using my bench scraper to take them off my pizza stone too. This bench scraper is just my new favorite tool. My next tip for homeschool burnout or a bad case of the Februaries would be to make sure that you're taking enough breaks. Going into this homeschool year, I knew that I was trying a different schedule, and our old schedule was working really, really well. And the only reason that I wanted to switch it up was because I knew that we were going to be doing co-op all year, and that would be different, and I felt like we should just follow the schedule of our co-op. Every other year, I have been using a 6 weeks on and 1 week off schedule. So that's what's known as Sabbath scheduling. And if you want to read a blog post all about what it's based on and how it works for me, you can do that. I have a post and I will put it in the description box below. Sabbath scheduling really did work well for me, and I've been feeling the lack of that break week because that break week would always be sort of my both preparation for the next little mini term and then also recovery from the last. So what I would do is usually I would have some kind of project that I wanted to get done during the week. Projects work really, really well for me. I need to have a project, have the project energy. I really like doing things in that sort of way. So some examples of a project would be like spring cleaning. Like during break week, I would do spring cleaning, or during break week, I would get out all of the winter clothes and do the seasonal clothing changeover. And then I also have a chance to reset my homeschool shelf and things like that. You guys don't even want to know how big of a disaster my homeschool shelf is right now. I honestly just have taken 15 minutes here and there to deal with it, but I haven't had that time that it really, really needs. So anyway, if you have not scheduled enough breaks for yourself for homeschool, I mean, you need to take a PD day for yourself as a homeschool mom, and just go ahead and do that. Another thing that I find that really helps in February time is getting enough socialization in. So that's somewhere that we are not struggling this year at all, because we all get plenty of socialization and we haven't been too sick or anything. So it's not like we've been stuck in the house for some reason like that. Also, the weather has not been that bad, so it's not like things have been all canceled. But if where you are, you've been super sick, or you've just been snowed in and things like that, then maybe that's kind of what's missing for you, and you just need to make sure that you make time to do social time with other homeschool families or your besties or your family members that are nearby. Something else that's a tip that it's not really something that works very well for me, but it's something that I'm noticing more and more working well for my kids, is the concept of a tracker. So whether that's a habit tracker, or like we do the 1,000 hours outside challenge, so we're tracking our outdoor hours. Maybe you would have a tracker on your smartwatch and it is tracking your steps that you take in a day. But those kinds of things are really motivating to some people. And if you need to put some kind of tracker in your life for your homeschool or for your kids or for your outdoor time, I would highly encourage that. For the 1,000 hours outside challenge, we do use the app that they offer, and I can link that app for you in the description box. It's so easy for me to just go on there and put in how many hours I think we got outside that day. So that's how we do that, and we find it really, really motivating. Especially, I think it's the competitive streak in my boys. I can't believe how well they do with that. Well, my little guy was really, really cooperative during my cleanup, but he was just done now. So I'm going to say goodbye for today and check back next week for more.